Once again, I'm at London Heathrow, and today I'm going to be taking an aircraft that shouldn't exist on an airline that I'm surprised that still does. I'll be flying on the A380 superjumbo down to Abu Dhabi in business class. I'll show you exactly what it's like from those bigger, wider superjumbo seats, the Arabian delicacies in a la carte catering, all the champagne and cocktails on board, and a full tour of the Inflight wine bar. But first, I've got to get there, so let's pick up the saga from one of the finest cities known to man, with a great many historical artifacts dug out of the loft, like an old 3D Viewmaster with views of London Airport as it once was. And then I need to get some modern transport up to the much more modern Heathrow. No, not that smoking monster. They're the far newer transport method to catch my old Airbus. Yep, a 50-year-old brush-type 4. And since no one has got around to building a rail line down south yet, the rail air coach from Woking will have to do, with a very short overnight stop in the Hilton at London Heathrow.
It's London Heathrow yet again. This time I'm going to be flying on Etihad. I'm going to be flying on their new, I say new A380. Actually, it's exactly the same A380 they've been flying for a decade, but they did scrap it, parked it in the desert, and now it's come back. So not only have I got the super jumbo to look forward to in business class, but I've also got the Etihad Lounge as well. Check it is open. Let's go.
So let's pick up the saga at just before 6 in the morning. Most of the passengers were looking like sleepy golems, hissing away, going, "What do you want?" But the check-in crew were surprisingly perky and surprised to see me yet again, and waved me in the direction of the lounge, all within 40 seconds. That's what I like. Fast-track security, and then I went straight past the absolutely deserted Prince of Wales pub. But I could see the first Bloody Mary of the day looming like a pot of gold at the end of the rain-soaked Terminal 4. Yep, it's time to go down to the Etihad Airways Lounge, which is down in the basement of Terminal 4. That's more like it. The lounge is deeply embedded in the bowels of Terminal 4 down the lift, and within a doldrums for a few years when Etihad pared cost to the bone after their spectacular failed investments in Europe, like Air Berlin and Alitalia. Then it was taken over by number one lounges and a real shadow of itself, run as a pay-in lounge. No longer. Etihad went through their own version of Brexit, took back control, and it's now open for the 3 A380 Etihad flights a day to Abu Dhabi. But enough about Brexit, I want breakfast, and they're the full a la carte restaurant where you can start off your day with an Arabic shakshuka and carrot juice. It's tastier than it looks. The shakshuka is brilliant. It's tomato and paprika salsa with feta and eggs, which is just what I need. And it's very popular in Gulf states like Iran and Iraq for breakfast. Yeah, foreign countries like the past, they do things a little differently there. It's all washed down with a cup of tea, lashings of fresh lime juice, and a croissant on the side. The lounge also does great Arabic coffee, so strong it makes you feel the opposite of drunk. I think that's knurd. Great, that's me set up, although I did feel an urge to check out the full English breakfast. Chicken sausages, not my favourite, but the mushrooms do look very good. There are also plenty of dried wood chips to sprinkle over your cornflakes. Again, maybe not for me this morning. Now that the Etihad Lounge has been brought back in-house and operates exclusively for Etihad passengers, the lounge is no longer available for Priority Pass, or indeed the huge volumes of hoi polloi who used to descend after SkyTeam shut their vast lounge at Heathrow Terminal 4. Indeed, at 6 in the morning, the place is pretty much a ghost town. A specials one marking a lament and elegy for a lost opportunity and the lost youth of Etihad before it went down all those roads it went down before. Aiming for a huge turnover, just for vanity, whereas now Etihad is aiming for a profit for sanity. That's great for me, as it's lovely and empty, even if it's dark and cold outside. There are plenty of places to sit, in fact almost a surplus of them. Alas and alack, plenty of evidence of the now long gone glory days of Etihad, with the old Six Senses bar in the corner of the main room now used for storing towels. Right, enough of that, let's find the bar. Bubbles this morning are the Joseph Perrier champagne. It's got a pale yellow gold colour, delicate yet lively with small bubbles and notes of apples and pear. It's round and most refreshing on the finish. Plenty of other wine, 3 whites and 3 reds to help breakfast go down nicely, and get this, Etihad even have a lovely English sparkling wine. It's a Nye Timber, grown in the chalk soils of Hampshire. The gentle slopes of the Downs allow for the best possible exposure to the English sunshine. It's got fine bubbles and a zing of acidity. And check out the whiskey selection too. All very impressive, but I can't hang around drinking all morning. The little hand is on the 8, and I've got an A380 to catch.
Well, there you go. That's the Etihad Airways Lounge, and it's really very good. It's great now that Etihad have resumed control of the lounge and it's no longer in the hands of a third-party operator. Next up, we've got the A380 from Etihad. Now, this is a bird I never thought was going to be flying again. It went out to the desert. It was pretty much going to be scrapped, and then Etihad have brought them back because guess what? The passengers love them. Certainly I do in business class. We're about to experience the business class cabin of the Etihad A380 down to Abu Dhabi. Right, let's go.
The gate is virtually outside the lounge, so only a brisk stroll.
Cabin baggage not exceeding 7 kilograms. Anything exceeding this.
Oh, Etihad are religiously checking for oversize or overweight hand luggage. Well, although Etihad retired its A380 fleet and said it would never fly them again and put them in the desert, a few months back it found it was short of planes and didn't have very deep pockets, so it rediscovered its old fleet to its exact specification, in effect parked around the corner with lots of miles left in them. Which is why, with very little fanfare, it's quietly brought them back again just for the London to Abu Dhabi route. Spot the huge overhead luggage bins on the A380, but unfortunately, no air vents. Now, business class seats are in a 1-to-1 configuration. Every seat has got aisle access. Alternate rows alternate either forwards or backwards facing. If you sit backwards, not only are you very exposed to the aisle, the window's a long way away. Forward facing seats are much more private, much better, and you also are much closer to the window. Now, the seat is in effect a large squashy armchair with lovely beige leather. It's got a great side lamp in Etihad's older style perforated aluminium. There's some good sized side stowage bins and a small remote with a screen. Amenity kits and a menu are at the seat. On the edge of the cocktail table there are simple buttons to recline or raise the seat, a light for perusing the menu, and one-touch buttons to put it into recline or drinking cocktails mode. Now, under the vast TV screen there's a cubby hole, so in bed mode you can lie down fully flat, and there's a big fluffy blanket in there when you want to shut yourself away from humanity. But that's more like it. The first in-flight champagne has been delivered. Today it's Devok's house, an 18th century manor in the Côte d'Esbar. It's got fresh floral aromas with hints of ripe peach and apricot on the nose. That's the booze, not the manor. It retails north of $80 in Dan Murphy, so it's a pretty good drop, along with a glass of orange juice for today's daily dose of vitamin C.
Together, Senior First Officer Abdullah Al-Sajwani from UAE and the rest of crew members. I welcome you on board this Airbus 380 operating the flight EY12 for destination Abu Dhabi, inshallah. Our highly cabin crew today are a trip of Miss Patricia from Kenya, and they are here to ensure safety and your well-being. Our trip today to Abu Dhabi will take around 6 hours and 20 minutes and be short in cruising at altitude of 39,000 feet. The weather, like you see, like you notice, it's a bit cloudy out of London, and we expect some turbulence during climb, and we expect a moderate turbulence for the first hour up to Germany. Afterward, it will be smooth flight in destination. So for your safety, I recommend you to keep your seatbelts loosely fastened while seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall get back to you just prior to descent into Abu Dhabi International Airport, and I will update you with the weather report as well as the arrival time. Meanwhile, please sit back, relax, and enjoy our hospitality and flight services. Again, thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very pleasant flight. Shukran.
Great to see warm towels are making a comeback. Etihad might just be dragging itself out of the airline doldrums. You know, for several years, warm towels were reimagined out of existence, like some other things, like chauffeur-driven cars, and indeed some of the classier booze and food. Well, the Amenity Kit is there, it looks good, but the actual content still remains pretty poor. Comes in a lovely orange leather pouch, but inside all you get is a small tub of hand cream, a perfume sampler and some hand gel, along with the usual toothbrush, paste, socks and eye shade. Beside the seat is a lift-up buddy seat, under which is a great storage compartment which contains the water and headphones. Goodness, how the crew laughed along with me when I commented how easy it would be to leave your laptop in there, and the crew said on every flight they collect 2 or 3. On the whole though, giving an ex-tempora judgment, in other words an off-the-cuff analysis, I'd say this looks like being a pretty good flight. Etihad called the seat the Business Studio, and in its day it was really groundbreaking, although now other airlines are more than catching up. British Airways, for example, they've got a big sliding door and every seat is angled forward with their latest seats. Equally, Qatar and even Emirates do offer a marginally better seat now. BA, for example, has a sliding door and every seat is angled forward with the latest seats, both with theirs and Cathay Pacific and many other airlines. That's better. Instead of the A380 evaporating in a cloud of its own pointlessness, it's suddenly come back into its own, and we can hear those lovely engines again. Good, pushback, finally, an hour late. Let's live and let's fly, and let's listen to the wonderful sounds of those Engine Alliance GP7200 turbofans. They're a joint venture between General Electric and Pratt & Whitney. And if you listen carefully, you can already hear that classic Pratt whine start away. Right, now we're taking a sharp right turn and waving goodbye to ugly stains. That's over the port wing, and I can flick on the tail cam. I do love the view of such a big bird gently drifting through the clouds. Now, the crew asked when I wanted to dine. We were only over the channel at this point and heading for France, but they wanted to know that Etihad has a dine-on-demand service. But equally, they mentioned that as the flight was short, I could either down now or in an hour or so. Well, despite breakfast, I had a rumble in my tummy and thought it best to grab the food while it was going. Previous experience tends to show that the dine-on-demand system is offered, more in the breach than in the reality. With a very short hop of just 6.5 hours, I wanted to check out Etihad's in-flight entertainment. In business studios, the IFE is excellent with a wide touchscreen. It's usually out of reach unless you've got your seat forward, so that's why next to the seat there's a secondary screen with a controller, which is useful for getting to the content you can't reach on the main screen. If you really want to, it can also be used as a secondary telly for viewing content such as a moving map or even live telly, although given its size, it's more useful if you're a hamster. Next to that is a third touchscreen to move the seat and turn on the plethora of lights. Alas, the in-flight entertainment was rendered totally pointless for me, as a previous occupant of the seat had left part of their headphones in the socket and it was nearly impossible to remove it. After the crew tried and failed and incidentally received some very nasty cuts in the process, I finally managed to extricate the pin with a knife and fork. Etihad Airways' in-flight entertainment system offers films, TV series, live TV, music and games, and a bunch of films that hit the rocky shore and went down with all hands. Indeed, the problem is there are very few new releases loaded, unless you include some box office bombs. The in-flight entertainment system's called E-Box, which sounds rather retro 1990s, but the screen is big, it's a large 18-inch touchscreen fixed directly in front of you, and it really is quite high definition. Noise-cancelling headphones are provided. They're really not the best, but they do save lugging around your own pair. Etihad's A380 was one of the first of the carriers fitted with live TV, and it was a revelation at the time, a decade back, and I'm pleased to see it still works. CNN, CNBC, Sport 24, and yes, there is a BBC News channel, now sadly merged with the BBC World, of course.
This aircraft is equipped with mobile Wi-Fi services allowing you to connect to internet and use your phone on board. Our new Wi-Fi packages start from $99 and include unlimited data allowance. Etihad Cast members can enjoy free chat, budget packages, or redeem miles to purchase Wi-Fi. As a courtesy to all guests, please ensure that your phone is free.
Right, that's our flight path over Europe, the Balkans, touching Greece and Turkey before flying straight through a very narrow corridor of permissible airspace over the Middle East, Iraq, and then straight in over the Gulf to Abu Dhabi. The crew came straight out with my drink of choice while we were over Belgium, and I went straight in for a Bellini. This is a classic mix of peach pulp and brut prosecco, and named after the Renaissance painter Giovanni Bellini, who was first knocked up in the late 1940s in Harry's Bar in Venice, which is still there and well worth popping down to for breakfast. Although as I flicked on the cocktail light, the A380 has everything, it was starting to feel a lot like lunchtime, so I asked for another Bellini while I watched Europe disappear below, and then asked for my nuts to be warmed. Still no sign of lunch after an hour, but the wine service had begun at what UK time was 10 in the morning, so it's time to start off with a Kiwi Sauvignon Blanc. The Alan Scott winery is in the heart of Marlborough, right at the top of the southerly island, and the glacial deposits give the wine a lovely mineral quality with a sharp acidity and hints of gooseberry. Here we go then, and time to fold down the huge meal tray. It slides out and up, and when solid is very firm. None of the floppiness I've come to associate with other lesser manufacturers on the Airbus. With no sign of lunch, after all it is still very early, it was time to pontificate over the comprehensive wine list. And sure enough, despite the early hour, the crew were very happy to oblige. Now, Philippe de Rothschild is known for producing exquisite wines that are enjoyed by wine lovers who've got a tenner to spare with their microwave meals for one. Escudo Rojo Reserva Chardonnay is made from carefully selected Chardonnay grapes grown in the very best vineyards in the Val de Casablanca. It has a brilliant golden yellow colour with an intense bouquet of tropical fruit aromas, a subtle vanilla note, and a long, satisfying finish. So good, in fact, I had to have another, really just as an aperitif, you understand, before my appetizer. And I mean that in the British rather than the American sense. and it really recovered my sang-froid after an early morning. Heading over Belgium now, taking a right turn to head over the Balkans, and then I returned from the bathroom to find my starter had been plonked down on the tray for me. No, that's not a mini Cornish pasty. It's mixed up with some Greek food though. It is in fact the Etihad version of the Arabic meze. Now the airline's competitor, Emirates, does a huge and very classic meze plate with 3 bowls. That's amazing. Etihad has heard of that philosophy and wants absolutely no truck with it. What you get is a warak enab, which is very popular in Lebanon, and it's in effect stuffed vine leaves like a giant Greek dolma, but don't let anybody in Lebanon hear you say that. And that giant Cornish pasty thing, well, that's a sambu sek la mi, a Lebanese pasty filled with meat and potatoes. Of course, in Lebanon, they claim that the Cornish copied the idea. Either way around, it's delicious and goes well with the hummus of the UAE. It's rather like a funny version of hummus with sweet yellow something in the middle. Plus a bit of tabbouleh just for breakfast. And for breakfast, we need wine! Yes, a bit of Chemin Blanc, in fact. But this isn't any old Chemin. It's made by the country's top producer of the grape, Mr. Chemin himself, Ken Forrester. It's packed with gentle white peach and melon flavours and has a finish that just whitters on and on, thanks to the unique terroir of the black soil in Swartland where it comes from. The spanners came out, a full metal cutlery set, as we head for Belgrade, and I was really looking forward to the main course. Options included chicken biryani or rigatoni with peas. But I went for the short rib, and I really wish I hadn't. I got a slab of tough, nondescript meat on mash with a few carrots and peas. Or rather, braised short rib with parsnip puree, pumpkin, fava beans, and jus. Yeah, I can't help feeling the chef fed that lot into ChatGPT and just sort of ended up with this, which they then doled out. It's woeful, really bad. Now, it's not the worst meal I've had on a plane. After all, I've suffered United and even Lufthansa. The gravy and mash were just edible, and that's being kind. I mean, just look at it, actually. The crew could sense my disappointment, but offered the reassuring words that at least I hadn't ordered the pea rigatoni. And the crew equally told me to avoid the biryani because they'd had it before. That does not inspire confidence. The only way to save it was to literally dive headfirst into the EU's metaphorical wine lake, and I went for the Château d'Orlando Le Sac Saint-Emilion from France in 2018. That's a Merlot to you and me, but a very good one. My glass presented dark fruits and generous tannins. It's well balanced between my fingers as I got through at least a couple of glasses while I was begging for my tray to be removed and the slice of whatever that meat was. Seeking a diversion from the emptiness of flavour that had catering, I longed for the flavour by dosing myself up with a peppery Shiraz from the Barossa Valley, and the Rebek Torza is terrific. So good, it's Ebenezer good. It's Shiraz sourced from the Rebek vineyards in the famous northern Barossa growing area of Ebenezer, originally settled by Wendish Lutherans. Next up, cheese. Ooh, I do like a little bit of assorted. I'd love to tell you what the cheese is, I'd love to, but I can't, and neither could the crew. Forever remaining a mystery, I think there's a Stilton, a cheddar, and a camembert in there somewhere, along with a couple of apricots and a few biscuits, which I needed to eke out as there appeared to be a dire shortage on board. And to go with the cheese, we need port. Now, Etihad have been following every other airline by just stocking Graham's 10-year-old tawny port. Although when I asked for it, you'd have thought I asked the crew for the moon. And not one made of cheese either. They spent a good 20 minutes rooting in the galley before they could finally get one out and bring the bottle to me. I was still starving, having ducked out of the chaos, so had room for the chocolate marquinaise. Now, marquinaise is a chilled chocolate dessert, rather like a very smooth, rich mousse with butter, eggs and sugar. This was oddly sprinkled with granola and a strawberry on the side and presented rather like a Christmas pudding. Now, to go with an imitation Christmas pudding, you need wine, and I wanted to try the Beerenhof's exquisite Grabuda from Burgerland, but I got a dirty look from the crew who blinked and said they never heard of it before tracking down a bottle in the forward galley. It's got a fantastic peach and tropical fruit aroma, rather like drinking liquid treacle. And just to ensure I work my way through all the wine, and I mean all, I diverted back onto the Alto Cabernet Sauvignon from South Africa. It's from Stellenbosch on the Western Cape, very full-bodied and very much a fruit-driven character. The tannins in it mean that you don't need to wake up for a wee if you're kipping on the plane, which is exactly what I did, thanks to the wonderfully comfortable A380 flatbed. Oh, that's a lot better. I had a lovely long sleep of nearly 2 hours. That, for me, is a long time on a plane, and I woke up approximately, or even appropriately, enough over Shiraz. That's in central Iraq. Now there's one more treat left on the A380, other than the wine that is. It's the Inflight wine bar. It's called the lobby and it's hidden up the front of the plane, and not many passengers seem to know about it. It's much smaller than Emirates bar. Indeed, the Etihad lobby lounge and bar is accessible to business and first class, and is sort of sandwiched between the two cabins. However, it only has 6 seats. They all surround this coffee table, and there's a rather useless corridor where the wine bar itself is located. You have 2 wine fridges, one for white and one for red, and then you have the spirits between them. These are free pour spirits. This will be great if you give it any mixers for them, but you have to ask the crew for soft drinks, so many people just pour them neat. On a plane, that's generally not a good idea. Indeed, you have to ask the crew for soft drinks, but you can pour as much booze as you like, which seems a little odd. However, Etihad are one of the few airlines to stock Irish Drumshanbo gunpowder gin. It's knocked up in a tin shed in County Leitrim, and it's really not a bad drop at all.
So there you go, that's the Etihad A380 in business class. The onboard lounge is okay, but basically it's only 6 seats in a circle around a wine bar. The Emirates lounge, I've got to say, does the in-flight bar so much better. Nevertheless, it's still a very, very comfortable flight, and I've actually really enjoyed it. I'm very glad that Etihad have kept the A380 in service.
The aircraft was fitted with Wi-Fi, and plans start at $3 for a chat package or $10 for full surfing. That's a major reduction compared to last year when it was $30 for only 300 megabytes. That represented awful value. It's much better now. But, and here's a quick hack, if you join Etihad's frequent flyer scheme guest, even without putting your frequent flyer card into the booking and just logging on with it, you get free messaging and email, which did me just fine. Right, once more onto my allocated seat after the abortive pub crawl to the pretty much deserted lounge that I found over the desert. Well, I'm walking past the rising passengers in the A380 coffin-like seats, looking like a procession of the returning dead, or maybe sleepy golems hissing, "What do you want?" But I can't hang about, as I feel I've been running around in a china shop sampling the beverages while I pluck pieces of Ming vase from my hoof, and it's time to enjoy that timeless view of Abu Dhabi by night. Except, of course, it isn't timeless, as 50 years back there was very little here other than a few fishing boats in the creek. And indeed, you may remember from reviews decades back, I used to fly in here when it was a little circular terminal at Al Batim with a few flights a day, really located out in the oil fields. Now, of course, you've got the huge new Terminal A that's just open. I'll look forward to that in a minute, but right now, we need to land in the dark in Abu Dhabi. it wouldn't be me without that familiar music playing. I'm talking about, of course, the Engine Alliance GP 7200 engines, all 4 of them. They're knocked out by General Electric and Pratt & Whitney, and they still have that very familiar Pratt whine we know so well from many flights before. Now, it's great that Etihad Airways is bringing back its Super Jumbo. After nearly retiring it during the pandemic, they spent 3.5 years stored in all places Spain, where it was pretty much assumed that the entire A380 fleet was going to be broken up for parts, until suddenly Etihad found it had loads of passengers again, and they loved the A380. Now, since Etihad has written off the entire cost of the aircraft, they are, in accounting terms, completely free to fly, although accountants do have a very weird way of looking at aircraft economics. But passengers rather than accountants have ruled, and Etihad have carried out the world's first 12-year check on an A380 and brought 4 of their 10 A380s back to fly, solely on the intense London to Abu Dhabi route this year for a very short-term, limited-time fix. But nevertheless, I love it. You do have the opportunity to get up and go to the admittedly quite small lounge and wine bar. The seats are a tiny bit retro, but they work very well in context, and it's a lovely aircraft to fly. Okay, so what do I reckon then? Well, the scores on the doors. Well, actually, there are no doors on the Etihad seats. You've got to fly on British Airways or possibly Qatar if you do want a door on your business class seat. But I kind of like the Etihad A380 Business Class seats. The Etihad seats, which it calls the Business Studio, has been well superseded by its A350 and indeed the 787 seat, but it remains a very strong product and is likely to be around for, well, depending on which blog you read, either months or years. But the aircraft is really quiet at the front, up top. The e-box system sounds as old as a plane, but it works quite effectively. If only Etihad could get their in-flight meals sorted. They use Doe & Co at London, the same caterers as British Airways, but BA meals are always so much better. But on the whole, I had a great flight and I really enjoyed it. Long may the A380 live.